Hi, it's Nicole, and today I'd like to go through some of my reading goals for 2026. I have no idea what my reading goals for 2025 were off the top of my head, and I don't really want to go through them like that because I think I kind of wasn't paying that close attention to them throughout the year. I do recall wanting to read, I think, 10 books that were already on my shelves. I only got around to 4, and I think those 4 were done in January of 2025. So started off strong, but I think after that I just didn't pick back up. And the reason that I'm not that interested in going back over and reassessing what happened there is because I genuinely feel like all of my interests and goal setting and everything has sort of like not hugely shifted, but just I don't feel like I would be getting that much out of doing that, and I'm more excited about getting into what I want to do going forward. So for this year, I'm keeping things pretty simple. I did have a watch of Natalie's reading goals, Natalie from A Curious Reader, and I quite liked how she was talking about not really being that motivated by number goals, and I would say I'm similar. I never really have been that motivated by them, and like her, I also haven't really felt much pressure by them. It never really fazed me that much, but I realize I do tend to set number goals more in terms of trying to map out a year. So for example, this year, one of my goals is to read 6 books on craft and creativity. And the reason I picked the number 6 is just purely because I can fit 1 book in every 2 months, and that accounts for also having other books that might pop into my life that have nothing to do with that goal. And I just felt like it gave me a lot of breathing room. So that's kind of where I've noticed that my number goals tend to come from. It's usually splitting the year by X number of books. Last year, I think I have about somewhere between 30 and 40 unread books on my shelves, and I just thought tackling 10 a year would mean that just 3 or 4 years and I would finish all of the unread books in my house just about. And I definitely have not been buying many books recently, so I do feel like if I were able to stick to that rhythm, I would have no unread books in my house in not that much time. So that was a really appealing number goal that I set there, but it didn't work out, so you know. So as I mentioned, I do want to tackle 6 books on craft and creativity, and I already have a lot of unread books in my house. You can see a few right there that would fit this goal. So I'm not too worried about like which books do I choose or anything like that. I do have a lot of options, and there are a lot of books that have been on my list of books that I want to get around to for a very long time now. So I am going to be coupling this goal of reading 6 books on creativity and craft with the goal to read more books from my shelves. And I think they will pair up quite nicely. That said, I'm not restricting myself to only reading from my shelves. I'm also allowing myself to read from the library, or like if someone gifts me a book, fine. But I am really trying to focus this year again on reading from my shelves. Last year was the year of audiobooks for me. I don't actually know if I read a single book last year that wasn't an audiobook. I know some people will say, that's not really reading. I don't care. And I got through a lot of books that I really enjoyed that way. All borrowed from the library, and I definitely want to continue listening to audiobooks from the library, but I am very eager to jump back into physical books. It's something that I've really missed, and I think as well the way that my work has been, I haven't really been able to set aside extra time to sit down and just read with a physical book. And at different stages in my work, I can listen to audiobooks while I work, so that had just been my primary way of engaging with any kind of literature at all in 2025. Like I said, I want to shift that a little bit more in 2026. I do really enjoy that moment when you're sat with a book. It feels for me quite meditative, and I think it really helps you to focus in on that world rather than multitasking. So that is something that I value, and that's why I want to share my reading out a little bit better between physical books and audiobooks, and I guess ebooks too. But honestly, I think being so on my screens all the time has made me less inclined to want to pick up books on the screen. Another reading goal that I'm going to be carrying over from 2025 into 2026 was to read at least 1 book in French. I actually think that the number originally was higher, like 3 books or 5 or something like that, but I'm going to lower the bar for myself and just try to read one book in French. And again, I have a few books in French in my house that are unread, so this isn't one that I would have to go out and buy a book for either. And I generally don't like to voice things that are just sort of vague ideas, but I'm going to here because it might actually help me. And what I want to do is sort of have a French focus in February, because French Feb just sounds kind of catchy to my alliterative ear. So in February, I'd really like to get through one book in French, and I'll probably try to increase the number of French podcasts that I'm listening to, and maybe even do a few simple personal essays or something like that that I can practice my writing on again. I feel like my reading goals are really working together with each other quite well. I think I'm talking a little bit scatterbrainedly about them at the moment, and it's not super clear. I'll probably put up a little graphic or something that shows them a little bit more clearly than I'm being right now. But I want these goals to be as easy for me to get into the habit of as possible, because I've really been out of the swing of things recently. But as I've been dipping into either reading a little bit more in French or sitting down for dedicated reading time with a physical book, those things have really felt pretty revitalizing in these first few days of January, and that's something that I'm really excited to continue throughout the whole year. Obviously, I recognize that I tend to feel very like hyped up for loads of things at the beginning of the year, and that can peter out as things get into summer, which feels weirdly busy in its own way, but like in a social, distracting kind of way rather than a productive sort of way. Not that I don't want to have this like focus on productivity, but honestly feeling like I'm doing things is quite fun and exciting. And recently that's been reflected in the fact that I've jumped into the world of knitting and back into the world of sewing, and that making, crafting, creating thing, particularly physically, it's just so exciting to me. It's something that really rejuvenates my energy, and it's something that I've been missing for a while. It kind of feels like I'm being awakened to the fact that I was a little burned out through 2024 and took a little bit of time even in the beginning of 2025 to find my flow again in the world of creativity outside of just screens, because I think a lot of my creative life has more recently been wrapped up in my professional life, and that has been very digital, and that has been that's been fun, and I enjoy that obviously, but I need to expand into the physical realm as well. And I think with all of the horrible things happening with AI and what I find to be quite a negative lean towards convenience and an erosion of like skill and I don't know, craft and making, all of that stuff can be quite overwhelming and upsetting for me. And getting back to physical creativity has been, I don't know, just it's really done wonders for how I feel. And so that's definitely something that I will be continuing into 2026. And I hope that my reading goals will help me in doing that. I recognize that this is not super well thought out and crafted as a video or anything like that, but every time there's a long gap between when I've been making videos, I have to like get back into the swing of it, and it's a little bit awkward and stuff. So I really appreciate you watching the videos when they do come out, even if they're not as consistent as I would like them to be. I'm just doing my best to explore the things that interest me and that I have time for and that I have bandwidth for and all of that stuff. So I guess that's it really. I don't want to ramble on too long. Let me know if you have any reading goals that you're really excited about. I also have a lot of hobby related goals that I'm excited to get around to, and I am hoping that this is a really good year to get on with all of those fun, exciting projects that I have planned. I hope that you are having a great start to your 2026 as well, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.